Have you ever wondered how a nation nestled in the Himalayas goes from being the birthplace of Buddha to a modern federal republic? Well, the story of Nepal is this incredible journey of constant transformation. We're about to cover millennia of culture, conquest, and revolution, so let's dive right in. Okay, just look at this timeline. It really puts the scale of this story into perspective, right? We're starting way back in the Neolithic era with the very first settlements. Then, boom, a world-changing event in the 6th century BCE. We'll watch dynasties rise, see the modern nation get forged in 1768, and then follow this dramatic, bumpy road from the first taste of democracy in 1951 all the way to the republic we see today.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll dig into its ancient roots as a cradle of civilization. Then we'll check out the powerful dynasties that sparked cultural golden ages. After that, we'll see how the modern nation was pieced together through conflict and track the long, hard fight from autocracy to democracy. And finally, we'll look at how it all led to the new federal republic of today.
All right, let's start at the very beginning. Section 1, Ancient Cradle of Civilization. To really get Nepal, you have to rewind the clock. I'm talking thousands of years to its prehistoric roots. You know, before there were any kings or borders or even countries as we know them, there were people here. Nepal's story doesn't kick off with a kingdom. It starts with human settlements, all the way back in the Stone Age. This land has been a home for humanity for an incredibly long time. And then a moment happens that literally changes the world. Right here in what is now Nepal, Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, is born. This one event in the 6th century BCE puts the region on the global map, turning it into a spiritual beacon for billions of people. Its global importance was sealed right at the dawn of its recorded history. So from that spiritual foundation, powerful kingdoms begin to pop up. And that takes us right into our second chapter. Dynasties and Golden Ages. This is the era where culture just explodes, leaving a legacy you can literally go and see today.
After its earliest history, Nepal's identity was really shaped by a series of powerful dynasties. You have the ancient Kirat rulers first, then come the Licchavi, who really kick-started a new era of cultural growth. But it was the Malla dynasty that took all that and just ran with it, creating a period so magnificent that we now call it Nepal's Golden Age.
So what makes it a golden age? Well, the Mallas weren't just kings. They were master builders and huge patrons of the arts. They're the reason the Kathmandu Valley is filled with these absolutely stunning, intricately carved temples. They also established key trade routes and nurtured this unique culture where Hindu and Buddhist traditions didn't just coexist, they blended together. It's a legacy that's literally etched in stone. But, as we know, golden ages don't always last forever. The cultural peak eventually gives way to a period of serious conflict and consolidation. And that brings us to our third section, forging a modern nation. This is the story of how the Nepal we recognize on a map was actually born. Okay, so before the 18th century, imagine the region looking like a messy patchwork quilt. Just dozens of tiny rival kingdoms, all vying for power. Then, one man, Prithvi Narayan Shah, comes along. Through a pretty relentless military campaign, he manages to stitch all of these warring states into a single nation. It was a truly transformative and brutal act of unification. And no sooner is this nation forged, it's immediately put to the test. The incredibly powerful British East India Company shows up, which sparks the Anglo-Nepalese War. Now, Nepal did lose some territory in the end, but it won something far more valuable, its independence. It was never colonized. That is a huge deal that sets its history completely apart from almost all of its neighbors. Now we move into our fourth section, from autocracy to democracy. After fighting so hard to stay independent from outsiders, Nepal's next big struggle would actually come from within. It led to a century of near total isolation before a massive revolution changed everything. So, for about 100 years, from 1846 to 1951, something really strange happened. The king of Nepal didn't actually rule. Instead, this one family, the Ranas, made the position of prime minister into a hereditary dictatorship. They held all the power, the king was just a figurehead, and they basically slammed the door shut on the rest of the world, isolating Nepal while everyone else was modernizing. But you can't keep a country locked away forever. Discontent was bubbling up among the people.
And the real tipping point came when King Tribhuvan did something unexpected. He sided with the people against the Ranas. That alliance was the spark for the 1951 revolution, which finally toppled the regime, ending a century of isolation and starting Nepal's long, often difficult walk toward democracy.
And that brings us to the final and maybe the most radical transformation of all. Section 5, a new federal republic. This is the story of how Nepal basically reinvented itself for the 21st century, a process that's still shaping the country today. For almost its entire history, Nepal was a monarchy. It's just what it was. But after a decade-long civil war that really shook the nation to its core, the country made a huge decision. In 2008, the monarchy, which was centuries old, was abolished. Just like that, Nepal was declared a federal democratic republic, one of the biggest political shifts in its entire story. And to make this new identity stick, a new constitution was written in 2015. This wasn't just some document. It was the blueprint for a totally new Nepal. It's what officially restructured the country into federal provinces, cementing that long journey from autocracy all the way to a modern republic. So, from ancient settlements to a golden age of art, from a brutal unification and a fight for survival, to a people's revolution and a brand new republic, Nepal's history is just this relentless story of change. Which leaves us with a really fascinating question. After a journey that has spanned thousands of years, what on earth will the next chapter for this incredible nation hold?